All right, I've had a couple people ask me about the basics of the interface editor, so here we go. The first thing that I would recommend updating in your interface actually isn't in the interface editor, it is hiding in the preferences. So if you go to your options and then preferences, there's a couple things we're going to want to do. First, we're going to come up here to controls, and then here is an option called max camera distance. This is by default set at something ridiculously low, like 14%. Which is fine. However, when you're in PvE or PvP content, you kind of want to be able to see more of the map from here. That way you can find mechanics or stuff you want to jump into, or players that are in trouble, or players that you need to kill. So if we go into preferences and controls, I would recommend maxing this camera distance out to 100%. There is no penalty for pushing this back as far as you can go, and if you like to get closer, you can always manually scroll in faster. This way you're able to see more mechanics, you're able to see more of the field, etc. The second option I recommend playing with is in the preferences again, and then in user interface. If you scroll down here, there is an icon that says show cooldown text. What this does is it allows you to turn on the number countdown on your abilities. So see, here's death from above. If I use death from above, it's now going to show me the seconds of countdown on my cooldown. So that way I'm not guessing how much longer is left on my different cooldowns. So if I cast my stealth scan, I know it's going to take 17 seconds for it to come back. Especially on your longer DCDs when you're not using any rotation and you kind of need to know when it's coming off a cooldown next so you can plan around how your defensive cooldowns are going to be blown. It's kind of important to have these longer numbers actually spent. So that way you're able to tell, hey, I have X, Y, and Z long before I can spend my vent heat again. I should probably either calm down a little bit or I should blow it all right now and then I can just vent heat and fix my problem. So those are two things I would recommend fixing in your actual preferences. Again, that's preferences, controls, camera, and then user interface. Down here in cooldown settings, show cooldown text. It's going to make your game a lot simpler and give you a little more information to help you along your way. All right, now the interface editor. The interface editor actually comes with a couple of interfaces that might work well for you if you don't want to play around with it too much. The extended quick bars, retro, enhanced are all pretty decent along with the advanced options. You can see here it is now popped out I think 4 different bars for me to use, especially in a game like SWTOR when you have so many abilities that you need to be choosing from. You kind of need to be rolling with more than just one quick bar. So if you don't want to start with anything, I would recommend running with the advanced, the extended, the retro, or the enhanced. Enhanced I probably wouldn't recommend right away just because it doesn't give you all 4. However, it does give you 2. It's a good place to start. So let's start off by using the advanced, because the advanced is going to give us a couple of really important options here. The first is that it's going to show me the text on my character sheet. You can see by default, the game doesn't want to give you text information about your health bar or your heat management. So you can see here if I'm spending heat, it's not telling me how much heat I'm actually spending. It's just giving me a bar and forcing me to guess. That's not really helpful, especially when you're dealing with like a tank or you don't know how much longer is left until you're able to use your execute abilities. Not really helpful if you don't have your text there to inform you of what percent people are actually at. So if you pop into advanced, you're going to see if I open the interface editor and click on my player frame, there's going to be an option here that says show information text. If you check that on or off, it's going to turn on those different options for showing the information text, which is going to be obviously important. Moving on down the list here, I'm going to hit save, voila, and now you can see my information text is showing just fine. Setting up your bars is relatively simple. I always have all 6 rolling at the same time just because I have a lot of things bound. However, you can get away with 4. I know that free-to-play limits you at 4, so that's what we're rolling with for right now. I like to make my bars a little bit bigger, and you can change the size of all of these different frames by clicking on it and then adjusting the scale here. So if I want to make my player frame a little bit bigger, or if I want to make my debuff and buff tray a little bit bigger, we can just manually scale these debuffs and these buffs up so I can tell what's actually going on my player sheet. Now with the buffs and debuffs, you're going to run into a problem here is that they're going to overlap, especially on like boss fights. They're going to be a massive tray of buffs and debuffs that you kind of have to be paying attention to. So to prevent them from overlapping, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually tone down how many effects per row there are on both my buffs and my debuffs. So that is scrolling down, clicking on the buffs and the debuffs, and limiting that to 3. That way, my buffs are stacking vertically into my screen instead of overlapping onto each other. It's a lot easier to manage what your buffs are that way, and it prevents them from overflowing into the rest of your player screen, and then you can't see what is actually happening to you. My sense of bigger is better applies to pretty much everything here. I like to have a little bit of a larger screen. I would adjust it to whatever suits you right. I'm going to turn off the tutorials because I don't need it. You can turn on and off any different icons that you like or don't like by clicking this enabled button. So you can see here, it's basically the first thing that appears on every single bar you click on is this enabled checkbox. So I'm going to pull these up, and then I'm going to make these a little bit bigger, or a lot of it bigger, like 1.2. And then manually adjust it. You are going to have to manually adjust all this stuff. So essentially, good luck. It's a drag and drop system. So drag and drop, drag and drop. They do give you little grid lines here to help you out a little bit. Now to make these quick bars actually extend or retract here, we're going to have the same option of show the number of slots and then show the slots per row. So I'd rather make this like a box that's a little bit taller so that way it fits better into my actual interface. So I'm going to make this 3. I'm going to blow it up a little bit. There we go. That looks about right. And this is actually my left bar over here. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to blow it up. I'm going to limit the slots down to 3. Oh, nope. That's the number of total slots. Limit the slots down to 3. And then drag it on over to the right. And now all my information is sitting pretty comfortably close together. You can arrange these bars any way that you want. In my opinion, it's best to have them all kind of clumped together. That way your eyes aren't tracking all over the screen. You can kind of zone in on one area of the screen whenever you're focusing on your abilities, and then get a good idea of what's available to you and what's not. So that's pretty much good enough for right now. One thing I would recommend turning on that's not on by default is target of target. These are default spawning down here in the bottom right. What this does is it shows you what your target is targeting. So I'm going to turn on the target of target, turn on the target of target. Especially for tanks and healers, it's much easier to see, oh, my enemy is targeting my healer, therefore I can just click on my healer. I'll save this and show you what I'm talking about here. So for example, I'm now targeting Andrew Pinte, who's targeting Andrew Pinte, etc. You can tell who everyone is targeting by focusing on their target of target. It appears that my target cast bar is kind of gone a little wonky here. So let's move this down, give myself a little more room. Make sure this is all showing properly. Yes, move all of this up. Thank you very much. My target frame, I want to make sure I have all my information text on. We should probably highlight buffs. And then we'll call it a day there. So now, there we go. All the information is displaying properly. So now that I've applied all of my changes I want to my actual bar, I'm going to come in here to the interface editor and actually toggle off the display with no target just because I like it to be a little cleaner. That way it doesn't appear when I'm not clicking on anything. And that's pretty much the basics of it. There's not much more you have to worry about here. You can obviously move around your scorecards up here. One thing I will mention is that if you don't see anything you're looking for, it might be actually hiding behind these different options here. So if you toggle this all option, so the main HUD is obviously what's showing in all of your content. However, there are some like Warzone content or Galactic Starfire content, etc. that you might want to adjust your HUD for. So if you come into the main interface editor and then change up the HUD, you can say, oh, in GSF, what's everything looking like? Oh, now I can adjust what all these different quick bars look like, etc. So if you're looking for a different type of content that is a different type of UI, you can come in here and change it using these different options here. So we'll come back to main now. That's really the basics of using the interface editor. You can then come up here and say, I want to save this as 4 bars, and then save it. And now, voila, you have now made your interface. It's pretty simple, nothing too fancy. It's a lot of poking around and seeing, oh, what wireframe am I looking at here, and how can I make it work better for me? One thing I forgot to mention is that once you have an interface that you like and you've saved it, if you click on this Customize UI button here, you can now swap through what your different keybinds are. So I have my setup here as PvE and PvP, and now voila, my UI has magically transformed itself to what I had saved before. So if you pull up here, I want to click on 4 bars, I want to click on PvP and PvE, etc. That's how you easily swap between the different UIs. So that is the long and short of the user interface editor. It's not that complex. It's just finding which wireframes you want to use using the interface editor and moving them around as you see fit. If there's something going on with the frames that you're not sure what's happening, check these sub options down here. It's oftentimes going to be living down there in a weird checkbox that says, hey, do you actually want to know how much health you have or how much energy you've actually burned, instead of just guessing. So this has taken a lot of the guesswork out of the different abilities. It's blown up things to a place where I can actually use it, and it's turned down my target of target and made things a lot easier for me. So I hope that helps you. If you find a system that works, great. Even if I don't like it, I'm not the interface police. Do whatever you want. It's free country. So until next time, adios. So that's the basics of the user face editor. The user face editor. Jesus Christ. So long story short, that's the long and am I dumb? Well, yeah, I am. That was real dumb.